Alright, buckle up, Buttercup, because we're about to take this anime recap from, and then this happened to OMG. You won't believe what happened next. Let's inject some much-needed caffeine and comedy into this epic saga. So picture this. Our girl Krishna went full-on killing mode on Zenos, mistaking him for a shady dude in the human trafficking biz when she saw Lily, but turns out Zenos was actually her savior, so Krishna apologized. But wait, there's more. Krishna's also on a quest to find a guy who played the mediator role between three feuding demi-human factions, and guess who the reluctant referee is? Our favorite Zenos, who was about as thrilled as a cat in a bathtub. He wanted her gone faster than a limited-time anime merchandise sale. However, Destiny had other plans as Krishna saw Zofia with Zenos. Krishna's inner Sherlock Holmes kicked in, and Zenos, cornered like a fluffy creature in a bad fanfic, had to spill the beans that he's the mediator she's been searching for. Krishna's reaction was priceless. She basically said, "Yeah, right, buddy, nobody rocks both defense and healing magic." Krishna's been operating under the delusion that all slum dwellers are evil because one had killed her mom. That's why Zofia drops the truth bomb that a noble named Cauldron is the puppet master behind the human trafficking ring. So Krishna stormed off to Cauldron's mansion. And here she got the surprise. Zofia wasn't lying, but before anything, Cauldron catches Krishna, and there our dynamic duo, Zenos and Zofia, swooped in for a heroic save. Talk about a dramatic entrance. Now, let's rewind to the origin story of Zenos' spectacular fall from grace. Remember that brainless party leader named Aston, who kicked Zenos out faster than a spoiled noble throws a tantrum? Yeah. Aston, the guy whose ambition was only to lick the noble boots, figured a slum dweller like Zenos would be bad for their oh-so-important image. But flashback to the gritty slums. Aston had stumbled upon Zenos. Aston needed a member for his party, but there was a pesky rule about slum dwellers not being allowed to be adventurers. Aston the rule bender decided to take his chances, and Zenos mentioned he knew healing magic, which Aston thought as a joke. He just needed the head count, so Zenos was in. But here's the hilarious part. In every fight, whenever Aston and his band of morons got injured, Zenos would heal them up faster than they could feel the pain, but the result? Aston genuinely believed Zenos was just standing around looking pretty. Hence, Aston kicked Zenos out, and now riding high on their undeserved fame. Aston snagged a fancy job from a noble to fetch some flame fox fur. They geared up their defense expert, who casted a defensive spell, and they charged in like immortals. Aston was surprisingly agile, but his party? Not so much. Naturally, Aston blamed the defense expert guile, whose spell was as effective as a screen door on a submarine, and one member was practically knocking on death's door. So they had to retreat. Suddenly, a light bulb flickered in Guile's brain that maybe Zenos was actually doing something. Aston was on his high horse of delusion and scoffed it off. So they did the sensible thing and hired a healer named Ormi. Oh, and their archer friend from a previous encounter was permanently sidelined. Aston thinks it serves him right because he was a weakling, but now comes a round two with the flame foxes. The fiery critters were in a particularly bad mood. Their mage took a hit, and Ormi was poised with some basic first aid. But Aston, in a rare moment of competence, again didn't land a blow, and Ormi yelled for them to retreat, or the mage was done for. He barked at Ormi to heal the mage, but nope. They need a high-rank healer or a saint here, or else a hospital pronto. A tiny crack appeared in Aston's massive ego that maybe Zenos' instant heal magic was working. But did he learn his lesson? You already know the answer. Predictably, that noble whose daughter's birthday gift was scarf made of fox fur had already passed, so he canceled the agreement. Panic set in Aston, who desperately tried to pin the blame on others, and after some serious groveling to the butler, he gave Aston one last chance. And now Aston's brilliant plan is to get Zenos back, not because he realized Zenos was valuable, but as a stepping stone to get Noble's approval. So Aston, in his infinite wisdom, decided the best way to find Zenos was to hire the boss of the demi-human faction. He went to Zofia, and upon hearing who Aston was looking for, she burst in laughter at him because he's the trash who kicked Zenos out. Aston swallowed his pride and moved on to Linga, but got the same reaction, then Loey, and again ditto. Aston was speechless for once, wondering if maybe there were multiple Zenos, and then fate in its infinite comedic timing delivered Zenos himself. He was strolling with Lily, and Aston seized the chance and tried to act like he was doing Zenos a favor by offering him his old spot back. Zenos was 0% interested, because Aston had treated Zenos like dirt and paid him peanuts, and Aston thought Zenos was rejecting the almighty Aston. Aston pleaded, and Zenos agreed to tag along for a job or two. But the catch is that Aston would pay handsomely depending on the severity of the injuries. Just then, a crowd of grateful patients gathered around Zenos, further deflating Aston's ego. Lily, finding Aston annoying, asked Zenos to ditch him, which he did. Aston was unable to process the audacity of being rejected and tried to kill Zenos, but luckily for Zenos, Krishna, who was wandering around slums looking for Zenos, shot him down. Talk about a serendipitous save. Krishna was yet another high-status girl who knows Zenos, and Aston, realizing he was screwed, knew what to do. Then later, the Zenos fan club gathered to discuss the weirdo on the high horse who was desperately seeking Zenos, so they had sent trackers after him, but Aston managed to stay off their radar. Zofia and the others were worried that Aston might resort to the Underground Guild, a shady organization that takes any job for the right price, but Aston is broken to afford that, and Zofia then remembered a rumor of someone who took jobs without payment. Then afterwards, Zenos couldn't sleep, and Lily tried to comfort him using his own sleep-bringing trick. And she was the one snoring within seconds. Then after Zenos tucked her in, Carmelia came down. She's still skeptical about how Zenos learned healing magic in slums. So Zenos finally that once he attempted to revive someone, it was a forbidden practice that got him a swift knockout from his teacher. But Carmelia then dropped a bombshell of her own. 300 years ago, when she was alive, she'd heard rumors of artificial life magic, a terrifying form of golem magic used in the demon-human war. These golems felt no pain, fear, and worked tirelessly until their task was complete, and suddenly the house began to shake, so Carmelia rushed outside and saw the lost demon sorcery again. And that's where our episode 5 ends, so stay tuned for the next episode and subscribe the channel, and hit the bell icon to never miss any episode. Till then, take care.